wow, you guys really outdid yourselves this time. The sources you send in on Benjamin Franklin are incredible. What a legacy.
It's really something else. You see his name everywhere, but to dive into the actual details is just mind-blowing.
He was a writer, scientist, inventor, statesman, diplomat, printer, publisher, political philosopher. The list goes on.
Talk about a Renaissance man, right? How did he even find the time?
That's exactly what makes this deep dive so fascinating. It's not just a bunch of bullet points on a Wikipedia page. It's about connecting those dots, seeing the through line of this incredible life.
And what a through line it is. You can't help but feel inspired looking at the impact he had on shaping a new society, a new nation, really.
So let's jump right in, shall we? Born in Boston in 1706, the 15th of 17 children.
15 of 17. I can't even imagine that dinner table.
Right. His father was a tallow chandler, a soaper, and a candle maker, so very much a hands-on, practical upbringing.
Which you can definitely see reflected in a lot of Franklin's later work, that emphasis on practicality and problem solving.
Absolutely. And his mother, Abia Folger. Well, her family tree is interesting. Puritans, but with a bit of a rebellious streak. Her grandfather actually got in trouble with the law, couldn't pay bail, ended up in some hot water.
Huh. Interesting. So maybe that independent spirit, that willingness to challenge norms was in the blood, so to speak?
Could be. Now, formal education-wise, Franklin didn't have much. He attended Boston Latin School for a bit, but was mostly self-taught.
Which, when you think about it, is just incredible. This is a man who becomes one of the leading intellectuals of his time, and he basically forged his own path to knowledge.
That really speaks to his inherent drive, doesn't it? That thirst for learning. He wasn't waiting for someone to hand him knowledge. He went out and grabbed it.
And you see that early on with his writing, too. He was apprenticed to his brother James, a printer. But he wasn't content with just setting type.
Yeah, the silents do good letters, sneaking these little satirical pieces into his brother's newspaper, the New England Current, without permission. What a little rebel.
He was already engaging in public discourse, shaping opinions, and advocating for things he believed in. Like, he was quoting Cato's letters in those early writings, talking about freedom of speech.
Without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom, and no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech. Powerful stuff.
And he was, what, 16 at the time?
Yeah, something like that. And then, boom, at 17, he runs away to Philadelphia.
You hear runs away, and you think of a kid getting into trouble. But this wasn't about mischief. This was about ambition, about taking control of his own destiny.
He was seeking opportunity, and Philadelphia was booming at the time. But of course, things didn't go exactly as planned at first.
Oh, right. Governor Keith promising him the world, backing for printing equipment in London, and then poof, empty promises. What a blow that must have been.
You'd think that would have sent him packing back to Boston. But no, he adapts, works as a typesetter in London, gains even more experience.
That's that resilience we see time and time again in his life. Setbacks, sure, but he always finds a way to learn and grow from them.
And when he does return to Philadelphia in 1726, he doesn't jump right back into printing. Instead, he takes on a bunch of different roles: clerk, shopkeeper, bookkeeper.
He's like a sponge soaking up knowledge and skills from every experience, always expanding his horizons.
And then finally, he circles back to his true calling, forms a printing partnership, and by 1729, takes the helm of the Pennsylvania Gazette.
Ah, the Pennsylvania Gazette. Now, this is where things really start to take off. It becomes this platform for his ideas, for social commentary, for advocating for change.
And it's fascinating that even later on, when he was a world-renowned figure, he often signed his letters B. Franklin, printer. It was like he never forgot where he came from, how that craft shaped his thinking.
Absolutely. It speaks to a certain humility, too, doesn't it? Never getting too big for his britches.
But he was also a big believer in community, in shared knowledge. And that leads us to the Library Company of Philadelphia, which he co-founded in 1731.
What an incredible idea, a subscription library. Making books and knowledge accessible to people who couldn't afford to buy their own collections. It was revolutionary.
And it speaks to his belief in the power of education, right? That informed citizenry was the foundation of a strong society.
Absolutely. He understood that knowledge wasn't just for the elite, it was for everyone. It was about empowering people.
And then in 1732, he unleashes Poor Richard's Almanac on the world. Writing as Richard Saunders, this fictional persona, he starts dispensing these witty and often insightful proverbs.
A penny saved is 2 pence dear. Fish and visitors stink in 3 days. I mean, these sayings have become part of our collective wisdom.
And they weren't just clever turns of phrase, were they? They were these little nuggets of practical advice, of social commentary, of moral guidance.
Exactly. He had this incredible ability to distill complex ideas into these simple, memorable sayings. And people ate it up.
He also tried to build a network of newspapers across the colonies, spreading information, promoting virtue, as he called it.
It was a bit of a mixed bag in terms of success. Political tensions were rising, and it's hard to get everyone on the same page when the ground is shifting under your feet.
But it does show his entrepreneurial spirit, his understanding of the power of media. And then, of course, there's the whole postmaster thing. Postmaster of Philadelphia in 1737, and later Deputy Postmaster General for the colonies.
And he doesn't just occupy the position, he revolutionizes it. The Postal Service actually started turning a profit under his leadership.
Talk about efficiency. He streamlined routes, improved delivery times, basically laid the foundation for a reliable communication system across the colonies, which, played a huge role in the revolution later on.
It's fascinating how all these seemingly disparate parts of his life end up connecting, influencing each other.
But we can't forget about the science. I mean, this is the guy who basically proved that lightning is electricity.
The kite experiment.
Yeah.
Legendary. It's almost too perfect, isn't it? This iconic image of Franklin flying a kite in a thunderstorm.
And it wasn't just about scientific curiosity. He invented the lightning rod, a practical solution to a very real danger. People were getting killed by lightning strikes all the time.
Right. He took scientific understanding and turned it into something that directly benefited people, that saved lives.
And the inventions just kept coming. Bifocals, the glass harmonica, the Franklin stove, a flexible urinary catheter. I mean, the range is incredible.
He was constantly tinkering, experimenting, trying to improve the world around him. And what's even more remarkable is that he never patented any of his inventions. He believed knowledge should be shared freely.
He actually wrote in his autobiography, "As we enjoy great advantages from the inventions of others, we should be glad of an opportunity to serve others by any invention of ours. And this we should do freely and generously."
Talk about a different mindset than we have today, right? This wasn't about profit or personal gain. It was about using his ingenuity for the benefit of humanity.
And his scientific curiosity was wide-ranging. He studied thermodynamics, oceanography. He even charted the Gulf Stream. Then there was hydrodynamics, meteorology, population studies. It's like his mind was constantly seeking new challenges.
He embodies the spirit of the Enlightenment, doesn't he? That pursuit of knowledge and understanding in all its forms, and always with this practical bent, like even his development of the pro and con list, a way to make rational decisions. Still useful today.
Now, we could spend all day talking about his scientific work. We're going to move on to his political life. It starts small, local politics in Pennsylvania. He becomes a member of the Pennsylvania Assembly, eventually elected speaker.
It seems natural, right? I mean, he's already this prominent figure, a successful businessman, a respected voice in the community, so people turn to him for leadership.
And then he becomes an agent for the colonies in London, defending American interests in Parliament. This is where his diplomatic skills really shine.
Especially in 1766, when he's arguing against unfair taxation after the French and Indian War. He's basically laying out the case for American self-governance.
Right. He's saying, hey, we contributed to this war effort. We're loyal British subjects, but we deserve fair representation. And he's doing it with wit and eloquence, charming the socks off some people while infuriating others.
He was a master of persuasion. And then there's the whole Hutchinson letters affair in 1772. That was a risky move. Exposing those private letters from colonial officials, showing their support for British crackdowns, it really inflamed tensions.
It was a turning point.
Yeah.
And it shows Franklin's willingness to play hardball when he felt the stakes were high enough.
Absolutely. He wasn't afraid to ruffle feathers, and his writing from that period, those satirical essays like Rules by Which a Great Empire May Be Reduced to a Small One, they're just brilliant.
He was using humor and satire as weapons, exposing the absurdity of British policies, rallying support for the American cause.
And then, of course, it all culminates in the Second Continental Congress. He's a delegate, a member of the committee that drafts the Declaration of Independence. I mean, can you imagine being in that room?
What a moment in history. And his quote at the signing, "Yes, we must indeed all hang together, or most assuredly we shall all hang separately." Chilling, but so powerful.
It underscores the gravity of the situation, the risks they were taking, and the need for unity in the face of those risks.
So war breaks out, and Franklin is sent to France as an ambassador. Talk about a high-pressure job.
A But he thrives in that environment. He becomes this beloved figure in France, secures that crucial military alliance in 1778, and then negotiates the Treaty of Paris in 1783, officially ending the war.
I mean, he was instrumental in securing American independence. He was a rock star diplomat.
And even amidst all that, he still finds time to engage with French intellectuals, to participate in scientific debates. Remember the whole Mesmer animal magnetism thing? Franklin was part of the commission that debunked those claims.
Always a scientist, always curious, always seeking the truth.
And then he comes back to America, serves as president of Pennsylvania, helps shape the U.S. Constitution at the Constitutional Convention. He's the only person to sign the Declaration of Independence, the Treaty of Paris, and the Constitution.
Talk about an impact. I mean, that's just an incredible legacy right there.
But his impact goes beyond those specific achievements. He was a champion of civic virtue, a believer in personal responsibility, as we see in all those poor Richard sayings.
And his views on slavery are also fascinating. He owned slaves early in his life, but he evolved. He became a vocal abolitionist later on, even serving as president of the Pennsylvania Abolition Society.
It shows a capacity for growth, for moral evolution. He recognized the injustice of slavery and used his influence to fight against it.
He was also ahead of his time in some ways. He explored vegetarianism and was a big advocate for inoculation against smallpox, which tragically he lost his own son to because he hadn't been inoculated at that time.
It's like he was constantly seeking ways to improve the human condition, whether it was through science, through social reform, through personal choices.
He died in 1790. His gravestone simply reads, Benjamin and Deborah Franklin. But his legacy is far from simple. It's vast, it's complex, it's inspiring.
And it lives on in so many ways. The institutions he founded, like the University of Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania Hospital, continue to thrive. His face is on the $100 bill. We quote his sayings, we marvel at his inventions, we study his writings.
Turgot, the French economist and statesman, said of Franklin, he snatched lightning from the sky and the scepter from tyrants. It sums him up perfectly, doesn't it?
It does. He was a scientist, a revolutionary, a diplomat, a writer, an inventor, a statesman, a philosopher. But most importantly, he was a man who never stopped learning, who never stopped trying to improve the world around him.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, but it's just a glimpse into the incredible life of Benjamin Franklin. Hopefully, this deep dive has sparked some curiosity, some aha moments, and maybe even a little bit of inspiration.
And we encourage you to keep digging, go back to the sources you sent us, check out some biographies. There's so much more to discover about this remarkable man.
Think about it. In a world that often pushes us towards specialization, Franklin was the ultimate polymath. He embraced a wide range of interests and used that knowledge to make a real difference. What could we achieve today if we were a little more like Benjamin Franklin? I think that's a question worth pondering.
It is indeed. He was a true original.
All right, well, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Until next time.